QAnon has become a massive topic in the political discourse in America. Crazy beliefs, including that Democrats drink the blood of babies and are in a sex cult. And I guess the blood makes them eternally youthful, which is obviously ironic because take a look at Joe Biden. Not so youthful. But the person who is expected or is, people suspected to be the person who was Q, who was doing the Q drops and sending out these posts on, I think it's called 8chan, from the account Q or whatever, and causing millions of people to have these unbelievable beliefs about the world. That person, his name was Ron Watkins, and someone making a documentary about QAnon talked to him, and there was this weird moment where it seemed like Ron Watkins kind of passively admitted or revealed that he was Q. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, I'm talking about this because Ron Watkins, QAnon guy, is now running for Congress in Arizona. And the sad thing is he probably has a chance. I don't know if he does, but okay. So here he is. Here's his announcement video. It's just, notice his eyes. They're like so obviously reading off of a massive sheet of paper or something. I don't know why they're going like this so much. Ready?
I've decided to expose the dirtiest Democrat in the DC swamp. And some of you here may already know him as Congressman Tom O'Halloran, representing Maricopa County and District 1. What's publicly known about Tom O'Hooligan shows that he is not fit to represent the people of Arizona. And from what I've already discovered and will expose, Tom is not fit to represent anyone anywhere.
QAnon mastermind, Ron.
There we go. Francesca Fiorentini, shout out. So, okay, QAnon guy is running for Congress. Well, he has a debate for this Republican seat, and it is just filled with beautiful moments, perfectly revealing his incompetence. And of course, there's other candidates, but he's the one we're going to be watching out for.
Good evening and welcome to this special Election 2022 edition.
So what we're going to be doing is just reviewing this debate because it's bonkers. You have to watch. Like, I haven't seen someone so obviously be deeply, deeply unqualified and incompetent as Ron Watkins does in this debate.
Of Arizona Horizon, I'm Ted Simons. Tonight we feature a debate between Republican candidates for Congressional District 2. This is a debate, but it's not a formal exercise. It's an open exchange of ideas, an opportunity for give and take between candidates vying to represent their party in the general election. As such, interjections and even interruptions are allowed, provided that all sides get a fair shake, and we'll do our best to see that that happens. Joining us now for tonight's debate, State Representative Walt Blackman, computer scientist Ron Watkins, and small businessman. And
Ron Watkins created 8chan, which became a huge right-wing, white nationalist site.
Andy Yates. Now, there are 4 other candidates in this race. We reached out to them as well, but 3 declined our invitation, and 1 didn't respond. Let's now get the debate started with opening statements. The order was randomly selected. Later in the show, the closing statements will go in reverse order. We begin now with Ron Watkins.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you, PBS. Thank you, Ted, and thank you, ASU, for this great opportunity. My name is Ron Watkins, and I am not a politician. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a computer scientist. I have been fighting for your free speech rights in the private sectors over the past many years. We must not send a career politician to DC. We have to send a fighter, and I am your fighter. I am fighting for you. We have major issues going on in our country, and that includes our broken border wall. That includes Many people not understanding that abortion is actually murder.
So he's likely the guy who is Q. Started all the QAnon nonsense. This man.
That includes the many people in power who are trying to infringe on your rights. If you send me to DC, you will know that I will be fighting against this evil, and I will make sure that we drive them.
Yeah, Charles said, I'm not a politician, but I'm running for office. I love when they say that.
Back.
I mean, I get their point, you know. I'm not a career politician, but now I want to hold this seat of power too. I get it, but it is funny.
That your rights are kept. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we turn to Andy Yates.
What? And that is why I want to make sure that your rights are kept. Thank you. Sorry, I was talking right before that. We have to see that again.
I will make sure that we drive them back, and I will make sure that your rights are kept. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we turn to Andy Yates.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Arizona PBS, for hosting this debate. My name is Andy Yates, and I'm running to represent rural Arizona in the U.S. Congress. My wife, Sarah, and I are both lucky enough to be from small towns, and so we instinctively understand just what makes rural America so special. However, much of my career has been spent working.
Guys, I get it. It's hard being on camera, like in that formal of a setting. Not this, obviously, but like in that formal of a setting. But really, you're running for Congress. Can you not conceal that you're all of these so far? Ron Watkins and this guy, so nervous, and it's so obvious. Like my mother runs a nonprofit. She doesn't like go on television for her job at all, but she's gone on news things to explain what the nonprofit does, and she comes off way more comfortable and media savvy and like quick thinking and like stuff like that, the things you would need to be good on television, than these people. And their like job is gonna be to speak as well as the legislative side of it, but a large part of being a politician is kind of the public relations side of it. I'm so nervous.
To advance America's strategic interest and values overseas in Iraq, Jordan, and Afghanistan. During that time, I've seen, why we're so blessed to be Americans. But I also learned just how much we have to lose and why we need to
he's loosening up now.
We need to put some checks and balances on the Biden administration because they're leading us down the wrong pathway. We need to return to what our founders intended and what the Constitution clearly lays out. We need a government that does less but does it better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we turn to Walt Blackman.
Thanks, Ted, and thanks, ASU. I'm Walt Blackman. I'm a combat veteran. I spent 21 years in...
So here we go. This is somebody who I'm sure his views are reprehensible. He is running for, this seat. But you listen to him talk in however many words that was, 10 words or even shorter, 5 words. And you go, okay, I'm comfortable. He's comfortable. I'm comfortable. He could be a politician. But the past two, come on.
In the United States military, I fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and after I retired from active duty, I decided to run for office. My family, my wife and kids, I have 5 children, and my wife founded Snowflake.
Let me just be fair. I said his views would likely be reprehensible. You can be a Republican, like we talked to Jacob, and not have reprehensible views. So I'm not overgeneralizing. I just assumed if he's... Nowadays, it seems like everyone is, I'm against... like legitimate elections. I think the election was stolen. We'll see. I know nothing about this guy. He could be a very reasonable Republican, someone like Mitt Romney, who we disagree with on policy, but is reasonable and has moral principles.
We've been in the district our whole lives. I know the district. I won the district twice, and I fought for the district. I know the issues that are pressing in our district. That's why you need to send me to Congress so I can continue to fight for you. Washington, D.C. needs war fighters, not the kind of politicians that we've seen in the past. Thanks, and I look forward to this debate, and I look forward to representing you in the United States House of Representatives.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's get things started. Ron, we'll start with you. You just mentioned that you were not a career politician.
Yes,
you
sir.
do not want to be a politician, yet you want to represent Arizona in Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives.
Except you want to be a politician.
Why should Republican voters, this is a primary debate now, why should Republican voters send someone to Washington who has no political experience?
Well, sir, over the past year or so, when the election was stolen, I was out there fighting tooth and nail to bring this information to the politicians. I brought it to the politicians. I showed them that the votes were stolen, the election was rigged. I showed that to them. I was the guy who discovered that the machines were stealing the votes. And I posted about it on Twitter, and President Trump was retweeting me. And I did a documentary with OAN, and I explained how the votes were stolen. And I brought it to politicians, but the politicians didn't do anything with it. They certified the election. They put it to DC. Afterwards, after everything was certified, then the politicians went back and said, oh, whoops, we made a mistake.
This is already my favorite debate I've ever watched, and I've watched a lot of debates. This is my favorite. This is so uncomfortable, and I've watched middle schoolers debate better than this guy, or speak better than this guy. Okay, you want to be a member of Congress, and then the moderator asks you, okay, you don't have any political experience, and you're kind of running on the fact that you don't have any because you want to be an outsider. Fair enough, Mr. Ron Watkins. What about you qualifies you to be in Congress? Well, I posted something on Twitter, and our terminally on Twitter president retweeted it, and it was about election systems being hacked, but they can't be hacked because they're not connected to the internet in any way. So I posted something. That's good. I should be in Congress.
Well, we can't have that happen again.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the stolen election idea
Yes, sir.
very quickly here. But, well, we'll get to you. You are a politician.
Yes, I am.
He says we don't need a politician back in Washington.
Well, you know, it takes more than just doing a documentary to figure out what to do with the past election. Now, a week after the election, I wrote a letter to the governor, the Secretary of State, and also the Attorney General to press for an audit, a forensic audit for the past election. Now, I've heard a lot of this discussion about the election. We need to decertify this election. In the Constitution, it says the 25th Amendment or impeachment. And I'm still waiting for someone to show me where we can decertify this election. Listen, I'm not saying I'm not for or against. I'm not saying I'm against decertification. What I am saying is, show me in the Constitution, the United States Constitution, which I've protected and defended for the past 21 years, where it says that we can decertify. And I'm not talking about the 10th Amendment, because the 10th Amendment doesn't say it either. Neither does that the certification clause. It only says certification. So if you could find a way, please email me so we can write this piece of legislation.
Hold on just for 1 second. You're going to get your chance, believe me. But Andy, I want to get you in here regarding the idea of a politician going back to Washington. He says not needed. Sounds like a different idea here. What's your idea?
Well, I agree that we need experienced leaders in Washington, D.C., but also leaders that are bringing new insights. You know, I'd like to share a little bit about my background. I've worked overseas for many years. One of my jobs was...
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I had this guy as a youth pastor. Yeah. He must have lived where I lived as a kid. And he was my youth pastor.
I was working with the Iraqi Kurdistan Parliament, where I helped them draft and then I helped them shepherd legislation
Isn't that
through
his
the Iraqi
vibe?
Kurdistan Parliament. And we did things like passing legislation.
Hey guys, I just am so happy that you're here today, and we're going to be going through Ephesians and just reminding ourselves as a community what it means to love God, what it means to love one another. And just remember, there is snacks in the back. Just try to limit yourself. Take one or two. Leave enough for everyone. And of course, at the end, we are going to be having our annual silly string, capture the flag. All right, let's jump in.
Legislation for persons with disabilities, which there are a lot in the Middle East, as you can imagine. We did things like strengthening oversight of Iraqi NGOs for more transparency, and we also created a loan program for would-be entrepreneurs in Iraq, because their entire economy is based on, you want some government job that's going to pay you, and you'll have that government security, but you really just stamp papers and push it around. So there were all these entrepreneurs that lined up around the door when we passed this legislation. So to wrap up, I'd just like to say, if I can pass meaningful legislation in the Middle East, I'm sure I can pass legislation in Washington, D.C.
All right, Ron, it sounds like you didn't like what Walt was saying here. Go for it.
Yeah, well, you have to understand, Walter, that you were asking me for information on how this could be done, when actually you were the one in office who was responsible for doing it. And you didn't, obviously, because we wouldn't be in this mess if you had.
Okay.
Now, what you have to understand,
let me
though,
tell
is
you this.
during the Revolutionary War,
there is
when
no
the Americans
place in the
rose up
United
to fight
States
against the British,
Constitution
there
that
was
says
no
that we
rule
can
that
decertify.
says,
Hold on,
I
Walt.
just want
there was nothing that
you'll
said
get your chance. Hold
we
on.
could fight the British, but we did.
Okay.
Americans go and they fight even when they know they can't win.
Okay,
I just
Walt.
want to be clear. This is the problem. What we have with people who don't understand the Constitution.
But we did win. We won in the Revolutionary War. I mean, I am not a historian, but if I do recall, the United States won in the Revolutionary War. Or it wasn't the United States at the time, but the American, the people fighting to have an independent, what would become the United States, succeeded.
Constitution, they don't understand policy. There is nowhere in the United States Constitution that says that we can decertify. Now, I would like to decertify. I really would. And I've been on the front lines to decertify this election. However, I have not been able to find a way. I'm not saying that what your way is not working. I'm just saying if you found a way, since you are talking about we can decertify, why don't you be that citizen and that patriot as you claim to be and step forward and show the rest of us, 60 members, how we decertify. But you can't do that because you know that there is no way to decertify this election.
Ron?
Well, can I answer that?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Blackman.
You call me Walt.
Okay, Representative Blackman. I was actually on the front lines of trying to figure out what was going on. I helped Mrs. Sidney Powell with the Kraken lawsuit. I helped Mr.
Oh, good. You're qualified. You helped Sidney Powell. Hey. We'll just ignore the little. Okay. This is my favorite thing ever.
Quindell with the Cypress Symposium. We worked
Oh,
so
good.
hard to
Mike
try to figure
Lindell's-
out what exactly was going on with these machines.
Cypress
and we
Symposium.
found that the machines were stealing the votes. And we gave them to members of the Arizona legislature. And you guys did nothing with it. And
No.
Actually,
You
Mrs.
guys,
Karen Fan,
you guys is not Representative Blackman. Representative Blackman, and the record is clear. My record is clear on what I've done for this past election. The election was stolen. We understand that and we know that.
Oh, okay.
However,
Yep, I was
would
right
like
about
for
this
these
guy.
people that are running around making millions of dollars and making these claims to actually come to the House of Representatives or the Senate and say, this is what we found in our investigation, doing outside investigations, and this is how you decertify.
Isn't that awesome that the reasonable guy on stage, I don't know about the youth pastor, but this guy, the, I guess, incumbent, what we get to debate between in the Republican Party is either I think the election was stolen and we should overthrow democracy, or here's your options. I think the election was stolen, but I don't think we have the legal means to overthrow democracy. Darn. I guess I'll go with option 2.
But none of you have come forward because there is no way, and you guys know that, and you haven't been there. We've been in session for 100 days. You guys haven't come up with a decertification. All you have done is say,
And hold
you
on,
can
hold on,
decertify.
Jim,
That's all
hold
you've
on
done.
for a second, Jim. I want Andy to get in on this. I mean, we're getting here quicker than I anticipated. But the idea, and I've heard this repeated now numerous times, the election was stolen. Was this election stolen?
No, I don't believe that it. I think this is a point of separation between me and many of my compatriots that are running in this election. I do think
Credit.
that our elections
Good job,
can
Andy.
be run better. We need elections that the American people have faith in. There's a lot of reforms, and I think the Arizona State Legislature has been working on a lot of those to tighten up our elections, to make it easy to vote, but nearly impossible to cheat. But to be, completely honest and frank with you, I'll say I don't think that the election was stolen.
So, Andy, you think that President Biden was legitimately elected?
Yes.
Okay.
Why do you not think he was legitimately elected?
Well,
Because
there
the
was
machines.
so much fraud ongoing that if we had the state legislatures across the country actually go through and legitimately do forensic audits all across the country, it would have been proven, and we would not be in the mess where we are right now with this inflation going through the roof, with this crazy stuff going on in Ukraine. All of this is because of weak politicians that did
Cheers
not
to Ron
do the right
Watt.
thing when faced.
There is no serious evidence so far presented to any court from the Supreme Court down. No court has taken this up. They found no evidence to continue with this. Why are you so convinced that there was widespread fraud when not a court in the land is taking any of this evidence?
Well, the courts would not even hear the cases, and that's part of the issue. The
But
leftist
they need evidence to hear the cases.
the leftist judges through the
Yeah, the leftist judges, all those judges that were appointed by Trump, not all of them. Some of them were liberal. There were also Trump-appointed judges that threw them out. And yeah, they didn't hear the case. Yeah, because just the preliminary understanding of it, it was so absurd. You don't have to hear a case if you can rule it out as even feasibly real or based on reality or based on evidence, then yeah, you don't even have to hear it. Crazy. That's not a point against us. That's a point against you. You couldn't even get your cases heard. That's how little evidence you had.
the cases out all across the country.
The Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, is leftist?
The U.S. Supreme Court did not hear the case that Texas brought forth with, I believe, 30-some states.
But courts need evidence. I can't say that you're from Mars and you're reading my mind. I'm going to prosecute you. I mean, there has to be some evidence there. They're not finding it. Why are they not finding it?
Well, evidence was brought to them. They threw it out. And I'm not a judge. I can't pretend to understand why. But the evidence was brought forth both to judges and to state legislatures around the country, and they did not do anything with it.
Walt, you said that.
So here's my thing. Let me just really quickly, I'll make this quick, and at the very same time, it won't be quick at all, because I never, ever am able to be short-winded. I literally forgot what I was about to say. That's brutal. Okay, I got it. Let's go back to this. This man, of what we've seen so far, if you are someone who looks around at the world and says every single traditionally trusted source, every judicial source, as in, I should say, judicial venue, and the consensus among election experts is that my claims are absurd. Okay? Fair. But I believe that all these people are wrong. And this guy, who started a conspiracy theory site, or if you don't believe that, just a site. He started a website. He found out the truth. He's so smart, so honest, that he was the one person who was able to find the truth. And my worldview is crafted around trusting people like him. How can you think, sorry, that was so loud. How can you think that these objectively, okay, not objectively, obviously, but so obviously bizarre people are the only honest and intelligent enough people to find the truth? this guy. It's nothing to do with his looks. His looks are normal. It's to do with the way that he carries himself. He's so obviously completely clueless while he's talking. Even if you believe his claims, I'm saying, even if I believe the election was stolen, even if I believe that, I would watch him and go, oh God, oh my God, even though he's saying things I like, he does not know what he's talking about. Same thing with Joe Biden. Like, it's different, but like Joe Biden may say something good, but it comes out like makes him sound really dumb because he stutters, or obviously he has a stutter, so that's not bad, but he like falls over his words and kind of is incoherent sometimes. I would say, oh God, he's not really representing my views very well. So if I believed this guy's views, I would feel the same thing. God, he doesn't know how to articulate at all the views that we have on our side. But in my case, I have thousands of uber sharp people who believe what I believe. On their side, these are the batch of people. Again, I'm not going after at all his mustache. His mustache is fine. I don't like mustaches. I don't like these little thingamajigs. But he's fine as far as looks, and I'm sure he's like a perfectly intelligent guy in regular life. But when it comes to politics, completely clueless. And this is who people trust to get them the truth. Everyone else is lying to them.
To judges and to state legislatures around the country, and they did not do anything with it.
Walt, you said that you think the election was stolen?
I do. I think that there was some fraud in the election. So I have neighbors that received ballots.
Oh, did you?
For other people. I have neighbors that went to the voting booths to vote, and when they went to vote, they were already voted somewhere. So we have done some great things in the legislative body to make sure that 2022 is secured, and to prosecute those that may have been found to commit fraud in 2020.
Andy, this is obviously a Republican vote here, a Republican primary. How do you convince Republican voters that there was no widespread fraud? If the court evidence doesn't do it, how do you do it?
Well, really a big part of my campaign is that my wife and I have been knocking on thousands of doors, and I'm not using that term loosely. I mean literally thousands of doors just this year, and we're talking to good Republican voters, high efficacy Republican voters on their doorsteps by the thousands. And we're having these real conversations, and sometimes they take a couple minutes, sometimes they might take half an hour on their doorstep. You know, this is an issue that gets raised and we talk through it. You know, I'm not claiming to convince everybody, and not everybody is interested in this particular issue, but I think when you really talk to folks, really engage with folks, you've got to do more than tweets and more than social media and more than Facebook posts. You've got to really dig into it with folks and look them in the eye, and that's what I've been doing.
Do you trust the election system in Arizona?
I do trust the election system, though every election system can be better. I've been an international election observer in North Africa and in the Middle East. And so I've seen election systems that don't work. I've seen election systems where it's pieces of paper in giant Tupperwares and people run in and they grab the Tupperware and run out with them. I mean, there are real problems around this world. But that's not happening in the U.S. to that extent.
Walt, do you trust the election system in Arizona?
I do. I do, because of the work that we've done coming forward for 2022, and then what we have done to mitigate these things that happened in 2020.
I trust it because I want people to go vote for me. But we've done really good work. If in 2024 Trump loses, it completely, in between 2022 and 2024, it backtracked. Nope, all of our work was in vain, and now it was stolen again.
2020. Now, every election, there are going to be issues. Let's look at the first Bush-Gore. There was election issues down there in Florida, and they had to go back and fix that. So there are things that we have done and work across the nation to make this election as safe and secure as we can.
Ron, do you trust the election system as it stands right now in Arizona?
Well, I believe that going into the next election, we're going to need a lot more poll watchers. We're going to need a lot more people making sure that the same shenanigans that happened last time does not happen again. So no, I do not trust it, and I'm hoping, I'm praying that more people step up to ensure that the next election will be.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. The way I phrased that was confusing. Let me be clear. No, I don't trust the election system. However, I am running in that election system. If I win, we prayed and we worked, and by some miracle, the fraud didn't keep us down. But if I lose, no. As I previously mentioned, I don't trust the system. They stole it from me.
Without fraud.
I think the next question would have to be, if you don't trust the system, why are you running?
I'm running because I'm going to win, and if I win 60-40, then perhaps the election will say that I won 51-49, sir.
Do you think Republican voters in this district want the Republican Party candidate for this office to be constantly looking back at 2020?
We need to fix 2020 before we can move forward. So as soon as I'm in office, what we're going to do is we're going to run a congressional investigation into exactly what happened in 2020. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to make sure that never happens ever again.
See, this is what I'm talking about of inexperience. First of all, states control their elections. In a congressional,
sure, but a congressional
environment, as you are a representative of the state of Arizona,
you're saying you would not investigate the elections?
You do not have the authority to interfere in state elections. You just do not.
You can
and you
investigate
claim
that.
to know the 10th Amendment, and you claim to know the Constitution, but you're talking at a junior varsity level. Listen, this is why we need experience in D.C., because we're going to get folks like this that go up there that don't understand the process of the policy. That's schoolhouse rock to me. You know, we need to make sure that we have the type of leadership and experience that I can bring to the United States House of Representatives. We need to be talking about some of the real issues in Arizona,
yes.
like forestry, roads, those types of
Just to
issues.
be clear, this guy is crushing it. Again, he also thinks the election's stolen. I'm rooting for the youth pastor dude, but he's dominating everybody.
We're going to get to those in just a
Or
second.
the two other
Andy,
guys.
I wanted to ask you as well, do you think Republican voters in this district want to constantly keep looking back at 2020?
I think some inevitably do, and I do talk to those folks on their doorsteps, but I do think the vast majority of the people that I talk to at this point, maybe not 6 months ago, but I think at this point they're ready to move on because eyes are shifting to 2022.
We're going to come back to this in a second here, but let us move on to the most pressing issue in this district. Andy, we'll start with you. What is it?
Well, so I think we all know that it's immigration. I've been down to the border. I know my colleagues have been down to the border, and we've seen the chaos that's happening down there. The problem with the current system is that it's not only about the wall itself, but the wall has become a symbol. If the United States government cannot fix the wall, if the United States government cannot put the personnel and the technology in place, we know what needs to be done to curb the tide of illegal immigration. We need to fix that so that we can move on to these more systemic issues. Our immigration system needs to be reformed in a lot of different ways. I think our system could be reformed to position our economy to be much better placed for the 21st century. We could be recruiting the world's best and brightest in ways that Canada and Australia and the UK are doing in a much better way than we're doing, actually. We could provide visas for STEM graduates to keep them here working. We could provide temporary work visas. We know that Arizona has a labor shortage in construction, in the service sector, in agriculture, and so there's ways that we use immigration strategically for America's best interest, and we're clearly not doing that right now.
Biggest issue for this district, Ron?
The biggest issue for this district is the border wall. The border wall was not completed, and there are actually sections of it that were destroyed. And I went down to those sections, and I asked the locals, how did this section of the border wall get destroyed? And they told me that Biden sent the Army Corps of Engineers down there to destroy the border wall for flood prevention issues. So I went down there and I saw with my own eyes, I saw the coyotes sitting right across the border. The coyotes looked me in the eyes and they ran away. When I was down there, I saw more coyotes than I saw Border Patrol. So what I did was I went and I talked to Sheriff Daniels, and I'd also talked to Border
I know people know this, but coyotes are people who illegally or, transfer. People pay them to help them get across the border.
Patrol leadership. And they told me that the biggest issues down there is funding. Last term, or perhaps this term, Congress defunded the Border Patrol by almost $1 billion. So when I get into Congress, I'm going to make sure we bring that money back for the Border Patrol and perhaps even bring in more, because this border, on our border, is actually bordering all 50 states. If fentanyl is coming through the Arizona border, if children are being trafficked through, that affects everybody in the entire country, and we need to protect our southern border.
Well, biggest issue for this district representing so much of eastern and northern Arizona.
Again, this is what you heard right here is a lack of knowledge in the district. Forestry, roads, water. Those are the biggest issues in Congressional District 2. The border is not even in our district. The border is a national issue. And the border, we can't just say, we want to close the border. We have to have a plan. And I haven't heard a plan from either one of these guys or any of the candidates. We need to close the cartel loopholes. That's going to stop the money that's coming across, and that's also going to slow the trafficking down. We need to seal the tunnels. We do that by sealing the tunnels from Arizona all the way to California through the El Paso border. We need to have solid policy that works, not just make up stuff, I want to close the border, and not knowing the issues in the district.
Well, Representative Blackman, I was looking through your bills, and I didn't see you put forth anything to stop this border wall issue.
Again, this is what I'm talking about.
What did you sponsor?
The bill that I put forward was to be able to take the materials that were already down there and to continue to build the wall on the Arizona side and using the COVID infrastructure dollars that came out of the administration. This is what I'm talking about. We have folks that don't even know how to read bills, and he's trying to debate on the stage.
Andy Walt basically said that you don't have an immigration plan. Do you have a plan? Do you have a... Talk to us.
Well, I think I laid it out pretty clearly that we need the federal funds and the federal resources to complete the wall, to also put the...
So this guy is doing so bad. You can't sit there and wait for the moderator to let you in. You got to jump and say, well, let me just jump in on this, blah, 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 and then make your point. As the two of them are doing back and forth, he needs to hop in, and he's sitting there, and the moderator goes, come on, say something.
The technology in place,
but frankly,
and the personnel and the judicial system.
We've heard that for a lot of years. The feds need to do something. The feds, obviously this is a federal office, the feds need to do something. Is that it? Is that the plan is the feds must do X, Y, and Z?
Well, like what?
Dumbest question I've ever heard. As opposed to what? The border is a federal issue because it's a border of a country. States have very little control over the border comparatively to the federal government.
Walt pointed out, this is a national issue, so the federal government needs to step up. We've seen other states starting to build the wall, with their own funding, and as a last resort, we might have to do that. But I do think that the way that I think the red tide is going to happen and that Arizona is going to take back the U.S. House, I think Arizona is going to, and the country is going to take back the Senate, and then the presidency in 2024, I think we're going to be able to fix this at the federal level.
Ron, why President Trump pledged that the wall would be finished and the Mexican government would pay for it. Neither one of those things happened. Why?
You're asking me why Mexico didn't pay for it?
Well, I'm asking you why that didn't happen. I mean, a lot of people put a lot of stock in that, and it didn't happen.
Well, I can't speak for President Trump, and I don't know what he was working on in the back rooms, but I do understand that the Mexican people are not part of the problem. The people that are coming through the southern border are not the Mexican people. I went down there and I talked to the locals. They were saying the people that were coming through are from like Venezuela and from Southern America, and actually even from Russia and different parts of the world. They were all going through the southern border.
You heard him. From Southern America. As in the South? Like Alabama? Southern America? South America, brother.
Because it's easier than going through the normal immigration.
Should people brought here as a child, should they be able to pursue education, join the military, live their lives if they were brought here as children? The DREAM Act. How would you vote on the DREAM Act?
Children are innocent and they should be allowed to stay here.
DREAM Act for a yay. Walt, what do you say about the DREAM Act?
Absolutely. These kids didn't commit any crime. A lot of them were carried over. And I agree with Ron on this one. I mean, these kids are innocent. The folks that we have to go after are those folks that are actively breaking the law, carrying drugs over, committing human trafficking. Those are the people that we need to go after.
What do you think, Andy? And again, do Republican voters in your district think that the DREAM Act is a good thing?
No, I think they do. I think I think it was contentious at first, and now I think as voters in the district have learned more about it, they are supportive, and I think that's a good thing.
All right. I want to get back a little bit to economic policies, especially for rural Arizona. Walt, we'll start with you, and you mentioned forestry and all sorts of other aspects, but we do a lot of stories on Arizona Horizon about rural economies and how they need help. How would you, representing some of these rural economies, help these people?
Well, the first thing we need to do is look at the internet infrastructure, and that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. My first year in office, I ran a bill that passed that gave $1 million into internet infrastructure in rural Arizona. That's going to bring jobs, and that's going to also bring revenue. That's what we need to kick our economy up. Navajo County is the poorest county in my district and in the state. So we need to look for ways to innovate new ideals for job opportunities, for job development, for education for these folks, and also making sure we have an infrastructure that's going to be withstood so we can bring in new investments and new companies.
Oh my goodness. One second. Thank you so much to... I just saw it come in. Sorry, someone just joined Patreon. When I find it, I'll announce.
That's what's going to help kick us off.
You got a plan for rural Arizona, tribal lands in particular?
Well, first off, thank you, Mr. Blackman, for bringing in a better internet infrastructure into the rural areas.
Here we go. Joseph Pierce, thank you so much for becoming a patron.
And I know you're good.
That's
good
very
on
important.
That. Yeah.
And your question was what my plan was for the tribal areas. Well, the tribal areas are a very special area, and they have their own governments, and we will be working together with them, with the tribal governments, to make sure that they have what they need as they need it. So we will not just be giving them money that has no transparency. We will actually need to demand transparency from any money that they receive. Now, they do have extensive water issues out there. In the 40s, America was mining uranium in the tribal lands, and now that's affecting about 15% of their water. So there's so many houses in the rural tribal areas that do not even have water or electricity, and we must find a way for them to even have these basic necessities of life.
Is money right now being funneled to tribal lands with no transparency?
I am not a professional on that. I don't know, but when I get into office, I will research that, and I will understand that to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, and Ron hits the point, actually. There is an issue with water, there's an issue with electricity, but the easy fix is let's fix the windmills on the Navajo Nation and some of these indigenous nations. Listen, I've been working on the Navajo Nation for the past 5 years, out there constantly talking to tribal leaders, talking to chapter leaders, and finding out those issues out there. Now, this isn't something that I want to do. This is things that we have done and brought ideals to them so they can fix their infrastructure issues, as Ron was saying, so we can get these folks standing up.
Andy, is there an easy fix in any way, shape, or form when it comes to tribal economy, tribal lands?
No, there's no easy fix, and that's why it's been going on for a long time. But I was actually watching President of the Navajo Nation, Nez, on your show, a couple of weeks ago, and he was pointing out that there's so much federal bureaucracy and so many regulations that even when they get the funding that they need, they're not able to spend it in a timely manner, and that's why they need extensions to be able to spend the funding. They know what to do, but they need more time because they're working with so many different federal agencies. I think that's something that we could do at the federal level to streamline, a lot of this paperwork so that when they do have the money, they can spend it in the right way because they know how best to spend it.
COVID relief funds, were COVID relief funds the right thing to do, not only in rural areas and in your district, but for the country as a whole?
Well, it was at the time. I mean, when you're facing a once-in-a-century pandemic, you've kind of got to throw everything in the kitchen sink at it to try to get out. In hindsight's 2020, and we see that the Biden administration, overdid a lot of things with this giant last.
Tim said Walt Blackman is the most reasonable, so he'll probably lose. I don't think so. This guy seems more reasonable. He doesn't think the election's stolen, and Walt does. So, but yeah, if what's his face? Ron Watkins wins. Just further grinding what's the phrase? I don't know. Very painful, I guess, is the point.
stimulus package that they did, and then that, is fed into a lot of the inflation that we're currently facing. But at that time, we needed to, and especially in the Navajo Nation, because they were disproportionately affected early on and lasted.
Would you have voted for COVID relief funds?
Well, over the past 22 months, 80% of all US dollars have been printed. And this is a huge problem, and that's because of the COVID relief funds. I would not have voted for that because, as we're seeing now, we're seeing inflation going through the roof. We're seeing all these problems, and it's because of the COVID relief fund. So we gave all this money to these pet projects.
Gotcha, Tim.
Different politicians, and in exchange, each person got $1,400. It was not a good trade-off, no sir.
What do you think, Will?
I think we had a lack of accountability on the COVID relief funds. I would not have voted for that particular package, particularly the money that went out on the nation. The money wasn't accountable. We have folks that were committing fraud with PPP loans. I mean, we just had a mess with it. We're $30 trillion, over $30 trillion in debt right now, and a lot of that is from the COVID relief package. Now, we needed to do something, and however, we need to make sure that we have a more management of control of those taxpayer dollars, because the money doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the American taxpayers, and they need better accountability.
Ron, Social Security, would you protect it? And if so, how?
Okay, so Social Security, it's a very important topic. The people that have paid into Social Security for their entire life need to be protected. We need to protect it for the people that have paid in and that are getting it now. But we also have to understand that for people my age, for men and women of my age and generation and younger, we have to understand that Social Security probably won't be there for us when we're old. So
Let's let him finish his answer, and then we'll talk about that.
would protect Social Security, absolutely, for the people that are currently getting it and the people that are paying in. But we have to understand that people of my age are probably not going to be able to get that.
I remember hearing that when I was your age. So we've heard that for quite a while. And
Good point. Okay, so first of all, saying the people who are paying into it or who have paid into it should get it, but then alluding to the fact that the younger generations won't, I guess is what he said, but shouldn't maybe is also what he feels. You understand that the younger generations are paying into it to pay the older generations. Like, money doesn't go into a big bank that the boomers put in when they were young and then they get it back out. No. You pay into it, and what that means is you're paying into the program and the program's paying out to the older generations. So right now, younger people are paying into the program because they're the ones funding the older generations getting back their money. And the money that they gave, that put into it, was given to older generations at that time. So that's dumb. But then also the idea of Social Security, just we can't help, it's going to disappear. And the program's going to melt down. You can just fund it more. It's cool to have it be all directly, this generation paid this much in, and then that's how much ish that we had to pay back to them. It's like we broke even. That would be cool, but doesn't matter. Modern monetary theory teaches us that when you control your own currency, and especially the United States, that is the dominant currency in the world, you have the ability, if you spend it in the right ways, to deficit spend without causing too much inflation, but growing the economy and adding value to the economy. And Social Security is definitely something that does that, because every one of those dollars goes to someone who's going to spend it on things in the economy that will help it stay stimulated. So it's just such a dumb, oh no, Social Security, it's not going to work anymore, we got to start cutting down. No. Yes, the generations now are so small, are getting, smaller than previously, so it's not going to be that balance of the right amount of people to pay the older generations, but to pay into the program that can then pay the older generations, but we can just deficit spend for it. It's not that big of a deal.
Would you protect Social Security? Does it need protecting?
No, I think it definitely needs protecting. There's so many seniors, and as I'm going door to door, and I also have, I also have relatives that rely on their Social Security check. They have very fixed incomes. I think Social Security, it might not have been the best plan, when FDR put it in place, all those, years ago, but now it's become part of the American fabric, and I think we have to protect it no matter what.
What do you think, Walt? Because there's a lot of talk about privatizing Social Security.
This is why progressivism is awesome. Ready? When Republicans do stuff, they can easily get reversed and no one cares. Really. Here's an example. Trump's big, landmark legislation was his 2017 tax cuts. Democrats ran on reversing those because it largely went to the top 10%. And people were fine with that. Now, they didn't get it done, but we've seen in history, taxes have gone up, and that's largely what the Republicans did as far as legislation went. Obviously other things as well. They appoint a lot of judges. We appoint liberal judges, and no one cares. But progressive policy, when you get it implemented, it's in there. The Republicans would have hated, the current Republican Party would have hated Social Security when it was trying to get passed. Oh, this is socialism. You're giving money directly. Or Medicare, Medicaid, socialism. But then once you just get it passed, they can't touch it. That's how powerful and popular progressive policies are.
A lot of talk in the Republican Party about privatization.
Absolutely. And again, we have two. I respect these two guys. However, we have a lot of I wanna. Listen, this is what I'm going to do when I get in Congress the first day. We need to have a system that those folks who want to use their Social Security number, the dollars that they paid into, that they're able to take those dollars out, using blocks to protect the rest of the folks that don't want to take their dollars out of Social Security and the Social Security dollars that are already being spent. Let's let folks invest their own money because it's their money to do that. So we need to have folks in Congress that have a plan, not just I want to fix something and not have a plan to back it up. And so,
well, what's your plan, Walter?
I just told you the plan. The plan is if you have Social Security, then you can take out your money that you've invested into Social Security and invest that into an IRA, invest it into a 401k, and you control those dollars. Those folks that don't want to take out their dollars, that money is protected and it stays in the Social Security accounts, protecting both. And also, as you mentioned that you're a young guy and you don't think Social Security is going to be here. If we do those types of steps, those aggressive steps, then your Social Security hopefully will be around because you have an opportunity to protect your invested dollars.
Andy, get in on this.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but George W. tried to do this, many, many years ago. I remember watching the press conferences in the White House, and I was excited about it. I think he had a modest plan so that folks could start putting 2%, into the stock market. And I don't think that's a bad deal. But it was a non-starter in reality. Too many people, too many good voters are so reliant on Social Security. And so, in a perfect world, we would do this. If this was Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, we could do a lot of amazing things. But the fact is that there's a lot of political realities, and there's so many things to fix, and we need to be fixing things that are fixable. So I'm not going to go to DC and spin my wheels on something that's been going on for decades and it's not going anywhere.
Here it is again. So what's your plan? You don't have a plan. You just have a Willy Wonka analogy, and you're just talking out the side of your head, I think. Here's the deal. We need to have a plan to do things.
Dude, Andy, you gotta cut him off. You can't let him cut you off like that and then just sit there while he pummels your face.
When John Kennedy said he was going to the moon, we do things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. He had a vision and he had a plan.
Yes, I agree. We should cut Social Security not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Do it. Social Security is not going away. The problem of Social Security is not going away. What we need to do is have those hard discussions that we are having now and come up with real solutions, not just Willy Wonka and we can't do this in the political reality.
I've read a lot about JFK and you're not him.
The deal is that we need folks in D.C. to step outside the box, that are aggressive, that are warfighters, to take care of these issues.
And we also need Andy to respond to that.
Oh, sorry, Andy.
Well, as one out of 435, if you get traction on that, I'd really applaud you and I'd support it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But I don't think it's going to happen.
Same question. Medicare.
That's
how to protect it. Should it be protected? Should medical care for seniors be privatized? What do you think?
Medicare should be protected, absolutely.
Okay, that's quick. What do you think?
It should be protected. It should go on an open market and should give people a choice, not like Obamacare. We need to have folks that are allowed to pick their provider.
Okay, so can someone answer this for me? Calling all conservatives. We just saw in a Republican debate, we haven't seen the third yet, but the two so far, yes, we need to protect Medicare. Why is Medicare not socialism and not crazy radical AOC is going to come in your house and stick a syringe in your child's ear and Marxism and CRT? No, okay. Why is Medicare not any of those things? But Medicare for all is socialism, communism, Marxism, Habitaism. I don't get it. Direct payments through Social Security, not socialism, not bad. Medicare, socialized medicine for the elderly, or for seniors, not socialism, not bad. But give anyone under the age of 65 or whatever it is, those same services, communism.
And if we put it on the open market, it's going to make premiums drop because it's competitive. That's how we protect it, and that's what we need to do moving forward.
Does that sound like a good idea to you, Andy?
I do. I think there are some private market reforms that could improve Medicare, but we've got to protect Medicare at its core.
All right. One last, I want to get back to some of the election issues here, but one last kind of a current event here. Well, we'll start with you.
Sure.
You support the U.S. giving military aid to Ukraine. Military aid only to Ukraine. I do.
You know, being a former warfighter, yes, I do, because those folks are fighting for liberty and freedom as our own. However, the bigger picture is how do we neutralize Russia? And I think that's what the armed forces are trying to do. The Joint Chiefs have spoken about that on many occasions. The SecDef is also trying to do that. The military aid that we need to get them is making sure that they have the ammunition, they have the firearms that they need, they have the air cover that they need for air support.
There's some in the Republican Party say this is not our fight, or we shouldn't be the policemen of the world. We've heard that for years. How do you respond to that?
You know, I fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and when I fought on the ground, when they were shooting at me, I didn't think it was our fight either. However, freedom, it goes around the world, and people want the type of freedom that we have.
Military aid to Ukraine. What do you think, Ron?
I support military aid to Ukraine, but I want to say that we would not even be in Ukraine if President Biden did not shut down the Keystone Pipeline on the first day. Because now that that's shut down, we have to get our oil, and we're getting it from Russia, and we're getting all these problems through the Ukraine, and that would not have happened if Biden did not shut down the Keystone Pipeline. So you see the Ukraine...
Yes. The war in Ukraine was started not because Putin wanted to reinstate the Soviet Union or is a lunatic, but because Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. Good stuff.
The pipeline helped prompt Russia to invade Ukraine.
Yes, sir, because we've got all of this oil coming through from Russia to the United States, and they want the better route to bring the oil through.
Can I clarify that? This is what I'm talking about. That's not why they went into Ukraine. They went into Ukraine because Ukraine didn't want to be part of NATO. Listen, you're trying to work on a national stage, and you don't even know why the war started in Ukraine. It had nothing to do with the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline caused the inflation and the increase in our gas prices. The reason why they went into Ukraine is because Russia wanted Ukraine, as they had them pre-World War II, and Ukraine wanted to be part of NATO.
Respond, please.
He's right. I made a mistake.
All right. Walt, what do you think? I mean, should the U.S. be giving...
Oh my gosh, it's too good. I don't know what to do with myself. Okay. I think the war in Ukraine was started because Biden canceled an oil pipeline. Well, that sounds sort of dumb because that has nothing to do with this. Don't you think it's more reasonable to think, Mr. I want to be in Congress, that the war in Ukraine was started because Russia wanted to conquer their territory and bring themselves back to the empire they once were as the Soviet Union? Yeah, no, you're right. That's not me. It's not like I'm running for one of the most powerful positions in the country. Why would I know about the biggest current event in all of the globe in the last few months? You got me.
Military aid to Ukraine. I mean, and again, the policemen of the world, what do people in your district think about that?
No, I think we absolutely should. I think we need to teach dictators all over the world that America will always stand with free people who are willing to risk their own lives in defense of liberty. And I think what we've seen in Ukraine in these past, in the past month is very different than what we've seen in a lot of our other foreign interventions. These people are stepping into harm's way to defend their country, and I think it's an honor that the United States is really leading the cause to provide them with the material they need.
How far should we lead? Should we send personnel there?
No, I think we've got to draw the line there. I think the great news is that it doesn't look like they need our personnel. It looks like if we provide them with the materials like we're doing, and we're stepping that process up. And I actually applaud the Biden administration for once. And I think Republicans should be able to do that. That he's actually done a pretty good job with handling the Ukraine situation.
Personnel in Ukraine, U.S. personnel, A and B,
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Has the Biden administration done a pretty good job so far?
The administration has done a pretty good job, yes. By not sending any of our troops to the Ukraine, that's
amazing.
A good thing.
What do you think, Walt?
No personnel, because I've been in that situation, and no, Biden is not doing a good job. Look what he did in Afghanistan. We fought in Afghanistan for years, and you were in the...
Oh, fascinating, sir. Do you think that Biden's doing a good job handling the war in Ukraine? No, I don't. Look at what he did in Afghanistan. Funny, I thought I asked about Ukraine, but I must have slipped up and said Afghanistan.
And we walked away from that. All he did was send a message to the world that we have a weak administration on the fence.
Oh, I see.
What he's going to do is listen to his advisors, who probably don't know what they're talking about much anyway in some of these situations. But no, we shouldn't send troops. And I really don't think he's doing a great job in this.
All right. I want to get back to the election, and I want to get to January 6th. Ron, we'll
that was
start
so
with
incoherent.
You.
What the heck
did you
did he just
reacted
say?
As a congressman on January 6th?
On January 6th, as a congressman, I would have texted President Trump and told him, please call this off, because it got out of hand pretty quickly.
Do you think he had the power to do that?
He did call it off, but he took a while to do so.
If he had the power to call it off, do you think he had the power to call it on?
I don't know.
What?
So he had invited all these people out there.
Oh, call it on.
And
I thought he said off
surely
again. Yeah.
there must have been some kind of intel going on, but I don't know. It was meant to be a peaceful protest.
I don't know.
And there were some people that got in there and did some bad things, and those people should be prosecuted, the ones that did the bad things. But for the majority of the people that were there, 99.99%, it was a peaceful protest and there was no issue.
So 99.99% of the people that we saw on television storming the U.S. Capitol, walking the halls, defacing the Capitol, these were...
Well, I just told you that there were people doing bad things, and there were millions of people there, and there was just a few people that were doing bad things.
Millions of people at that rally and at the Capitol? Millions?
Yes, sir.
All right, Andy, how would you respond as a congressman if you were there while this, as some people call it, an insurrection occurred?
I would second that. I think it is an insurrection. I think any fourth grade class that visits D.C. on a school trip knows that you don't forcibly storm the United States Capitol. I think it's a sad day for America. I think it's really depressing. I look forward to the January 6th Commission, their full findings, and I hope that everybody testifies and we get all the information. It's a really sad day for America, and I would have done everything I possibly could to call it off, but looks like the powers that be wanted to stoke those resentments.
Explain that, please.
Well, it seems like it was a concerted effort from a lot of folks, and I hope that we see, what happens.
Prosecutions?
Well, absolutely. If you break the law in the United States, we live in a country with the rule of law, so of course there would be prosecution.
Okay, so it looked like they broke the law. Did they break the law?
Yes, they did. I took an oath years ago to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That day, there were some domestic enemies. They stormed the Capitol. They did something that was inappropriate. I mean, when we have police officers being wounded, when we have people in the United States halls of our laws and our Congress fleeing for their lives from other Americans.
I agree, Jared.
That's just inappropriate. Those folks who committed those crimes should be held to the fullest extent of the law. And then we need to make sure those folks who didn't commit crimes, that they don't get mixed up in some of that judicial issue.
How would you describe these people? Would you describe them as criminals?
Absolutely. The ones that broke in and caused all the chaos inside the Capitol building, of course.
What do you think led them to do that?
I cannot pretend to understand what was going through their minds.
Yeah, Andy, what do you think led them to do that?
Well,
I'm not asking you to be them,
right.
But I mean, everyone's got an idea. What's your idea?
Well, people, yeah, I really can't put my, I've spent time at the Capitol.
I can't possibly fathom what led all these people who were clearly screaming that they wanted to prevent the election from being certified and wanted Trump to stay in power. And Trump said minutes before they went there that they should march to the Capitol and shouldn't let the election be stolen. But I don't know. Could have been anything. Maybe it was a Olivia Rodrigo concert mob that went wild. I didn't get that. I didn't even get the joke, so don't feel bad if you didn't get it, because I didn't even get my own joke.
Well, I was my first job out of college, I was an intern in the U.S. Senate, so I've spent a lot of time in these Capitol buildings, and I really think of them as just hallowed halls of democracy, and I have so much respect for the space and the people that serve there and the folks with good intentions, and so it really hurts me personally to see what we saw that day.
Well, there are some in the Republican Party, and not an insignificant amount, who see these people as patriots, who see what they did. I think some of our sitting congressmen people said this is what happens when people are frustrated. Those sorts of lines. I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, what I do agree with is what we see in the country now. We have a divided country. We have Americans, it's like a civil war going on out there. We have Americans against Americans.
It's not.
And when that fire gets stoked and emotions
get what a civil war
drawn
is,
up
brother.
and built, we're going to see things like that. Though it's appropriate, there are some angry people in our country, and we need folks that are going to stifle some of that fire and do the right thing about the Constitution and not spread lies about what we can do and what we can't do. So we just need to bring our country back together the best way we can. I know that these guys are patriots and they want to do the same thing. And when I say patriots, I don't mean the type of patriots that were beating down police officers. I'm talking about the type of patriots that love their country, that want to see their country going forward on a true magnetic north.
Ron, some people say that a lot of this was stoked by QAnon. What is your relationship with QAnon?
I have no relationship with QAnon.
None at all?
Yeah.
None at all.
The reports are that your bulletin board sites hosted postings that launched QAnon conspiracies.
So I ran a free speech website, and I was the administrator. And there were many thousands of people that posted on those sites. Q was just one of those, and I do not know who it was, and I'm not that person. Just like how perhaps Trump used to post on Jack's Twitter, that does not mean that Jack was Trump. I was not Q, and I am not.
Do you feel some responsibility for misinformation that may have led to January 6th?
I love that gives it all away, right? So here's a perfect analogy for what just happened. A husband and a wife are in their house, and there's a lot of noise. And a neighbor goes, "What is that shrieking? I'm going to call the cops." The cops come. Picture. The guy walks out, closes the front door, and walks up to the cops and goes, Hi, officers, is there a problem?" And they go, "Yeah, we got a call. Do you mind letting us know if something might have happened to your wife?" Of course, all the police know as of now is that there were shrieks, okay? And he goes, "Oh, no, I have no idea what happened to my wife. I mean, I live here, obviously, so I'm in the same house as her, but just because I'm in the house doesn't mean I did something to her. Like, I didn't kill her. I don't know who killed her." That's a similar vibe, because just now he said, "What's your relationship to QAnon?" And he goes, "I'm not Q. Nope, I'm not Q. I don't know who Q is." We didn't ask you that. We asked you what your relationship, like, do you believe in it? Obviously, he's alluding, just like how the police would be like, "Did you kill your wife?" Well, that's what we're kind of asking. But the first question is just, is your wife okay? In this scenario, he probably wants to know if you're Q, because that's been going around. But he didn't specifically ask that, so you kind of volunteered that information, which is a little suspicious.
I do not feel responsibility for misinformation, no, sir.
No, sir. Okay, Andy, you think misinformation is to blame here as far as what happened on January 6th? And the state of the country, as Walt mentioned, divided so much right now.
I agree. It is definitely divided. Walt and I actually bumped into each other once, and we talked about how our experience overseas gives us this unique perspective about, we're Americans first. When you're overseas, you don't care what the color of that person's skin, their religion. You're happy to be side by side, shoulder to shoulder with an American, and that's how I view. That's how I view politics. I have a lot of disagreements with the Biden administration, with Nancy Pelosi, with the Democrats. I'm a strong conservative, but they're Americans, and I'd be happy to talk to them.
Real quickly, you mentioned Nancy Pelosi. If Republicans take the House, would you support Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House?
I'd have to look at who's running at that time, so it'd be. It's difficult to say right now.
Even though he had apparently he wanted to advise Donald Trump to resign because of January 6th?
Well, I think we've seen with some of these recent tapes that he said one thing here and one thing there and another thing there, and I'd want to dig into it when the time comes and make the right decision.
Walt, if you go to Washington representing Congressional District 2, you'll have a say, possibly, if Republicans take back the House, to the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, considering all we've been hearing lately. What do you think?
Well, I don't work for Kevin McCarthy. I work for the constituents of Congressional District 2. And
Listen,
unless he moves into the district and has a say about who we should support for Speaker of the House, then at this point right now, I'm going to listen to my constituents, and a lot of my constituents are not happy with the present leadership.
Okay, the present leadership, but again...
The present minority leadership.
You're right. Okay, all right, we'll leave it right.
Jared asked, when is their election? It is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. That's interesting. It's in August, and then then you have September, October, November. That's pretty quick in the general election, but
there, Kevin McCarthy, what do you think? Especially in light of the audio, and especially in light of what he wanted to tell then President Trump.
Well, just like Mr. Blackman here, I would talk with the constituents and really get down to the nitty-gritty with the local leaders and even the people just that I've met on the campaign trail. I would try to get as many opinions as I could. And then I would go in there and I would listen to what they had to say in DC, the leadership out there. And I would make an educated decision based on all this information.
Okay.
But at this moment, would I? Probably not.
Probably because of his statements regarding then President Trump.
That's right.
I have to ask you, do you live in Arizona?
Yes, sir.
Where?
I live in Tonto Basin, sir.
Okay, how long?
About 6 months.
6 months. Okay, where before that?
I was working internationally, and I lived in Japan for a few years.
Okay, do you think Republican voters in Congressional District 2 want someone who's lived in the district for 6 months?
Well, I grew up here as a kid. My family, I was an Army brat, and we moved all over the country, but my grandparents and great-grandparents lived in, or still live in, Quartzsite, Arizona. So my family roots go back to Arizona, and I was here as a kid. And after I graduated high school and college, I started an international business, and I worked abroad. And after I saw that the inefficient and ineffective politicians were not doing their jobs, I decided, okay, I'm going to throw it all away, and I'm going to go and I'm going to try to run for office myself.
How's that narrative sound to you, Walt?
It doesn't sound good at all. And this is what we're seeing in this campaign. Since the lines have changed and the Republican points have gone from negative or Democrat 3 to Republican 9 and in some cases 12, we see all these folks that are jumping in the race. I haven't seen these guys knocking doors when we were trying to turn this district red. I've never seen these guys out there registering people in rural Arizona to vote. I've never seen these guys being out there on days when we thought that we were just not going to be able to go anymore. These folks are flying into this election. This guy's been here for 6 months and he doesn't even know the darn issues other than to say the border. I'm not saying that he's not a patriot, and I'm not saying what Andy has done in Afghanistan is not warranted. We need people in this district that have lived in this district, that understand the district, that have sent their kids to school in this district, that know the district like the back of their hands.
How long?
With all due respect, 17 years.
17.
With all due respect. These guys that are running in Congressional District 2, except for one, and that's Tamara Williams, do not know and do not understand or live in the district.
Andy, respond, please.
Well, as Walt knows, I moved to Arizona about 20 years ago, and my first job in the state was working for the Arizona Republican Party. I managed voter registration initiatives across the state at that time. It was actually during that time I was working with Pinal County Chairwoman Sharon Gill, and we flipped Pinal County from a Democrat county to a Republican county.
And Pinal County is not in Congressional District 2. That's, I mean,
well, it is in Congressional District 2.
It wasn't in Congressional District 1.
And
that's what I'm talking about.
Actually, I knocked on thousands of doors in Pinal County.
Right, Florence and Gold Canyon are in Pinal County. So I have put in work in the district. This was 20 years ago. I have an MBA from ASU. I have a place in Prescott. And so I'd say that I'm pretty steeped in Arizona history.
All right, I'm going to ask each individual. Ron, I kind of went with you as far as your location. So, Walt, I want to start with you on this one, and something that I read that you have said, that you said abortion doctors and women who get abortions should be charged with homicide.
Exactly. You know, that's already in our statute, the Arizona statute. If a person commits abortion or kills a baby while in the womb, it's under our criminal statute. I didn't make the law up. The law has already been there. What I did was codify that law. Now, going back and changing that and amending that, what I have done is allow women to be able to seek services, counseling services for what they need. Now, here's the deal. The black community, there are more babies being aborted than born every day. Now, the problem that I see is that that is not part of the conversation. And if I have to do something to save the black community of babies being aborted in a record number, guess what? I'm going to do it. But we need to save all babies. When we have states like California and New York that are pushing late-term abortion, that are pushing infanticide, and we stand and do nothing, it's time for us to take a stand for life. It's time for us to get on the side of God. And it's time for us to protect these children that are being murdered in the womb.
Homicide at what level? How far should the pregnancy be when it's homicide? Conception?
Conception.
Conception.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Conception. Life starts at conception.
All right, so you want investigators to look at what?
I would like for them to do what's already in law.
Every stillborn birth
It's already
needs to be
in law.
investigated?
It is already in law. I didn't make that law. That law has been on the books for years.
Andy, homicide charges for anyone who receives an abortion, any doctor who performs an abortion at any time after conception.
No, I don't think so, Ted. I'm pro-life, and anyone can visit my website, yatesforarizona.com, and you can see that I've laid out my positions as being a pro-life candidate. I applaud what it looks like the Supreme Court is about to do, which is taking these important decisions and giving it back to the states so that states can have more say in abortion policy. Abortion, an issue of this magnitude and importance should be decided by democratically elected representatives. But no, I'm not going to put handcuffs on doctors and women coming out of surgery. I think we've got a big win coming right now with the Supreme Court. I think we should be happy with that.
What do you think, Ron?
Abortion is murder. And I agree with Mr. Blackman here that we need to send all abortion cases in front of a judge and a jury.
Every failed pregnancy needs to be investigated?
Well, failed pregnancy doesn't necessarily mean it's an abortion, sir.
Well, I know, but it could be, and so anything could be, any death could be a homicide. Need to be investigated?
We need to investigate all abortions, yes, sir.
Okay.
And it needs to go in front of a judge.
That's the crazy thing, is if he did this, every miscarriage would literally have to be treated like a potential homicide. And you'd have to grill grieving women to make sure that they accidentally had a miscarriage and it wasn't intentional.
Judge and a jury. As a homicide.
As a homicide.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, we only got a couple minutes left, so this is going to be relatively quick, and I apologize for this because it can be a very deep topic. Climate change, does it exist? Global warming, does it exist? Is it man-made? Andy, we'll start with you.
I do think that the Industrial Revolution, since that time, that we have affected the climate. But I like to think that Republicans are at heart conservationists. Teddy Roosevelt, who has a long history with Prescott and the Rough Riders in Arizona in general, he was a strong conservationalist. I think Republicans often, because of the rural nature of where we live.
Is it not conservationist? It's conservationalist.
We spend more time, in the outdoors, whether it's hunting or whether it's hiking. And so, I think Republicans are natural allies to protecting the environment. But I'm not going to speak to specific science because I'm not a scientist.
Okay, we got to make it real quick, Walt. I apologize for that. Man-made? Global warming, man-made?
Yeah, I do believe in some cases. I know we need to get the EPA out of our business in the state. So that's what I'm talking about, man-made.
All right, what do you think, Ron?
Well, climate change, the Democrats just use it to tax us. So I think we should not even talk about climate change.
Not even address the issue.
Not even address it. We should just get rid of the entire idea of it.
All right, that's an interesting way to end the debate. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Time now for closing statements, and going in reverse order of our opening remarks, we start with Walt Blackman.
Hey, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this debate tonight. What you've seen here is a lack of experience, you've seen a lack of solutions, and you've seen a lot of talk from my two folks that are running from my right and left. I'm Walt Blackman, and I have a proven conservative track record of making sure not only Legislative District 6 and Congressional District 2 has been taken care of, because I've been doing this for the past 2 sessions at the Arizona House of Representatives. I'm a fighter, I'm a combat veteran, I have a proven track record of making sure that I put Arizonans first. The first responsibility for anyone running for Congress is to make sure that they protect you from the federal government. I did that as a state legislator, making sure that I protected these folks that I represent from the state government, and I'll do it in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so he's not the, I said he was in the incumbent earlier. That was the way they were making it sound. Looks like he's not the incumbent, but he currently serves in the Arizona House of Representatives.
Thank you very much. And now the closing statement from Andy Yates.
Thanks, Ted, and thanks to everyone watching at home. I'd like to point out that though the recent trend has been for all political discourse to focus on these big, contentious national issues, the fact remains that rural Arizona, the folks in rural Arizonan counties, they have really specific, unique local issues. Things with wildfires, as we're seeing right now, things with public land management, things with mining, agriculture, rural healthcare access. So we need to be focusing on those issues at the local level. And we need a representative that can bring the local, state, and federal decision makers to the table to create lasting solutions and to build resilient communities. I'm Andy Yates, and I'm ready to be the fierce advocate, the fierce representative that rural Arizona needs and deserves.
Go, Andy.
And thank you. And finally, closing statement from Ron Watkins.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you, PBS, and thank you, ASU. It's been a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and it's very nice to have this kind of discourse with the two other candidates in the race. What the people at home need to know is that I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to make sure that your voice is heard in DC. I will make sure that you have access to your representative, and I will make sure that you are going to be happy, and I will make sure that everything that you want to happen will happen, because I will be your representative and I'm going to represent you. Thank you, and God bless.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks to all of our candidates for tonight's debate. Our next debate features Democratic candidates running for Congress.
Wow. Okay, that closing statement was a doozy. There we go. We have the 2nd District of Arizona Republican primary congressional debate between two guys and a QAnon guy. Andy Yates was definitely my favorite. And that's not saying much, so